Nothing was ever said to John Bolton, but I have not seen a manuscript. I guess he's writing a book. I have not seen it.
President Trump denying details leaked to the New York Times about John Bolton's upcoming book. It's set for release in March. But should it really come out in an election year at all? And how damaging would that be to relationships between future presidents and their top staff, especially the National Security Advisor? Fred Fleitz has known John Bolton for 30 years and twice served as his chief of staff. He joins me right here in the studio exclusively tonight. Fred, you're making a pretty remarkable plea to John Bolton tonight. What is it?
Well, John's an old friend, and I didn't take any pleasure in writing this piece today, but I believe that the concept that presidents have to be able to confide in their national security advisors and be able to knock around ideas, this is extremely important. We want the president to consult the best possible advisors and know that whatever he discusses with them isn't going to appear in the press or in books. So the best thing here would be Ambassador Bolton to pull this book until Mr. Trump leaves office, or at least until after the election in November.
There's a lot of speculation today in Washington who leaked this account of the transcript. People talking about individuals who vet manuscripts at the NSC, and a couple of names were floated. I'm not going to mention them because we haven't confirmed it. And others people say it's a publisher trying to hype the book before the book goes on the market. If it were someone in the White House leaking this, who vetted it, what would your thoughts on that be?
Well, I take Ambassador Bolton and his team at their word that they didn't leak it. But look, sending something so sensitive to the White House during an impeachment hearing and all the bureaucrats that would review it, I'm afraid it was an invitation for a leak. There's a report now that there were many paper copies made in the National Security Council. If that's true, heads should roll on the NSC. This should have been very carefully. Look, that doesn't excuse the decision to send it to the NSC at all.
Yeah, but isn't it? I mean, you know, I consider Bolton a friend too. Probably not as close a friend of yours, but he's come on the show and other shows of mine for 20 plus years. He knows how this goes. He's not a neophyte. He knows how this rolls in Washington. And he knows it's going to get leaked. Does he not?
I think it was a mistake to send this to the NSC in the middle of an impeachment trial. I don't think he or his staff leaked it. They may have assumed it would be handled very carefully by the NSC. I think that decision was a mistake. I think in these circumstances, a leak was very likely.
Chuck Schumer seems to be very much in the Bolton camp right now. Watch.
There seems to be a giant cover-up among so many of the leading people in the White House. If there was ever even a shred of logic left to not hear witnesses and review the documents, Mr. Bolton's book just erased it.
Schumer, Nadler, Schiff, all poised to put John Bolton on Mount Rushmore of heroes in the modern political age. What does that say to conservatives, Republicans, and others who serve with him?
Well, the allegations attributed to Bolton that the president wanted investigations of the Bidens aren't anything new. I mean, assuming that that's true, this was part of a deliberation. In the end, that didn't happen. We want presidents to throw around ideas with their expert advisors. I don't know that the president held that position. And frankly, we know this is based on anonymous leaks to the New York Times. We don't even know if these reports are true.
This was a moment tonight in the presentation by the defense team where Pat Cipollone talked about, actually it was from Saturday, election interference. Watch.
They're here to perpetrate the most massive interference in an election in American history, and we can't allow that to happen. The American people decide elections. They have one coming up in 9 months.
For all their talk of election interference, they're the ones perpetrating election interference with this impeachment.
It seems like the Democrats are worried that the American voter is going to interfere with the election of the next president. See, I mean, if you listen to this, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The American voter makes a decision, and it just seems like, in the Democrats' view, unless a Democrat is elected, the election isn't legitimate, that something is wrong. That's not the way our system's supposed to operate.
When's the last time you talked to Bolton?
I talked to him recently, not today.
So you think he's burning to testify? He wants to testify?
I'm not going to comment on my private discussions with Ambassador Bolton. I'm just saying that we had to respect the concept that presidents have to be able to confide in their advisors, the best possible advisors, knock ideas around. The president can't be afraid that those discussions could be leaked or published. So I think Mr. Bolton really needs to withdraw this book.
Fred, we really appreciate you coming. We enjoyed your piece. It was provocative. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.